Good morning. So I want to give you guys a little bit of insider information you didn't know. That couple that they put in that video there, apparently they're this really sweet couple that they don't really, even really know how to fight. So it was the equivalent of he was going, I never liked your casserole. I never liked it. She's like, you don't like my casserole. You don't like my casserole. Little tidbit for you today. We've been in this amazing series for the last few weeks on how to fight fair, dealing with conflict and the most important relationships in our lives. And we're going to go back to this core passage we've been in and be kind of examining different angles of it from week to week to week. So we're going to go right back to verse 1 of Acts chapter 15. And I'll kind of paint a little picture here for you. Certain people came down from Judea to Antioch and were teaching the believers, unless you are circumcised according to the law taught by Moses, you cannot be saved. To which I say, what? Hashtag, ouch. What? Why? Did this get piled on to the gospel somehow? But what happened was they were in this tremendous dispute. These guys got together and they had traditions, they had family, they had religious beliefs that came together. And so this brought Paul and Barnabas into sharp dispute and debate with them. This was heated. It was emotional. They had a lot riding on this. And it was going to be a really big deal. They realized how important this was going to be to the future of the faith. This little foundling Christianity, these Jesus followers, they're trying to figure out, how are we supposed to do this? They didn't have the scripture like we do. They didn't have all of these writings. They just had what they were taught directly by Jesus and what the Spirit was leading them to do as they went. And they did one of the smartest things they could have possibly done. Check this out. So Paul and Barnabas were appointed along with some other believers to go up to Jerusalem to see the apostles and elders about this question. They said, you know what? We got to get other eyes on this thing. This is too important. It's too big of a deal. We're too emotionally involved in this thing right now. So we're going to send a contingent and go to Jerusalem and consult with those guys there. We need to come to a conclusion. This is too important. The big idea for this series is this: conflict is normal in a relationship and is God's opportunity for us to grow in maturity. If you're new with us today, we like to take notes. So if you pull, there's an insert in your bulletin there, and you can pull that thing out and you can fill out these little fill-ins you'll see coming on the screens as we go along here today in the message. Now, here's what I know about all of us, all right? Everyone has a squishy spot. Speaking metaphorically, okay? Everybody has got a squishy spot. Everybody has got a topic or an issue that when someone comes into conflict with it, when someone questions it, when someone pokes at that squishy spot, you feel that internal temperature rise up in you. You get your back up. You kind of get real focused all of a sudden. See, some of us, it might be when someone questions how you parent your children. Oh, how about when somebody questions how you handle your money? Right? How about a friend says, hey, Troy, you know what? It seems when you're sad, you drink too much. You drink a lot when you're sad, Troy. To which I say, no, I don't, you big baloney. Maybe your wife sees that text from a coworker you wish she hadn't seen. Some of us were born with this sensitive, squishy spot. Some of us inherited it, and some of us have created it all on our own. But eventually, see, we all get poked in that spot. And it's usually by the people that know us the best and love us the most. And when that happens, man, when that internal heat comes up, when you get your back up, when the emotions rise within you, the peripheral vision goes away. We all get tunnel vision, and pretty soon all you can see is your perspective, and you desire to defend that perspective. So the big idea for today is this: when conflict narrows our sight, we need outside help to open our eyes. When conflict narrows our sight, because you're going to have conflict, and when that emotional temperature rises and your peripheral vision closes in on you, we need outside help to open our eyes, just like the apostles did when they were figuring out this whole circumcision issue. You need someone who's going to help you see what's going on, someone who can look from the outside and look in on it. Yeah, can you imagine in a UFC fight if there was no referee and it was between the fighters to determine whether that was a low blow or not? It would be chaos, and we're no different. See, as long as you're in relationship with other people You will have conflict. The only guy who doesn't have conflict, right, is a guy who's by himself on a desert island, and eventually even he winds up arguing with a volleyball. And it's stunning that we don't have more conflict than we actually have, because we all have such different stories. We have different familial backgrounds, different traditions, different cultures, right? We come from different ages. We have different kinds of politics, Pile on top of that we're male and female. And then to top it all off, you and I are broken, selfish sinners. And the book of James says it like this: what causes fights and quarrels among you? Don't they come from your desires, the battle within you? See, sadly, our sin nature takes honest disagreements and turns them into poisonous arguments. So you and I, we are going to have conflict. And as long as you're a human, you need outside help. Human beings need other human beings. We're so much better in community. We are wired for one another. The book of Ecclesiastes says a cord of 3 strands is not easily broken. We're so much better together than we are apart. It makes us stronger. We need the perspective of other people. From the time that we're infants, your parents look in on you as an infant and they see your weaknesses. They see the deficits in your information. They see the deficits in your experience. And as you grow older, other people will invest in you. It could be teachers. It might be coaches. It could be grandparents. It could be older kids at your school who kind of help you along on the journey. But the sad thing is, a lot of us, we get to a certain point in our lives, we kind of feel like we no longer need outside help. We no longer need outside input. And the truth is, we all have blind spots we don't even know that we have. You know what a blind spot is? You went through driver's ed. Okay, when you're driving along in your car and you've got these rear view mirrors and they tell you that the rear view mirrors don't always reveal everything that's behind you. So before you change lanes, right, you've got to look over your shoulder and make sure no one's in that blind spot over there before you change lanes. What if you firmly believe, you're convinced that you have no blind spot in your car? Okay, and you run along and you just decide, hey, you know what? I'm going to go to Quick Trip, and you change lanes, and you never look, and you wonder why you hear screeching tires and calamity behind you. But one of these days, you're going to change lanes, and you're going to collide with somebody. And it's going to cause a lot of unnecessary hurt and destruction. When I was in my 20s, it became clear that I had a series of emotional issues, like a year's subscription to Time. Okay. Magazines used to come in paper to your house. Over a year, there'd be a bunch of them, a lot of them. Well, if you have to explain it, it's not funny anymore. It was barely funny the first time. It became clear that I had some issues, and I had some friends that I talked to. I bounced this idea off, and they said, Troy, you know what? You might actually want to go ahead and see a counselor about this. Just it might help you dig up some of that stuff that is informing your relationships. And so I went to this counselor, and this really great guy. I think I spent about 5 or 6 weeks seeing him. And what he revealed to me was I had major commitment issues, okay, based on all kinds of family baggage and experience and stuff. And I was scared to death of real relationships, didn't know how to handle it, didn't know what to do with it. And the way that manifested itself, at least in me, was I would hop from church to church to church to church because no church really was quite right. And he said, Troy, what I want you to do, I want you to pick a church and I want you to commit to it. And I want you to embrace it for all of its warts and all of its beauty. And I did. And I got to tell you, that was one of the healthiest things I ever could have done to prepare me for a serious relationship. A couple of years later, I meet this really hot brunette named Gwen. She was over here singing earlier. And both of us still have a lot of fear attached to relationships, a lot of fear attached to family and marriage and that whole thing. So we decide to go to pre-engagement counseling, right? Overachievers, okay? We went to pre-engagement counseling, just driven by fear, just so you know. And one of the great things, they just getting to know each other, understand each other, we started to learn about each other is we have very different social energy, okay? Like Gwen is really extroverted and I'm really, believe it or not, really introverted. So I want to apologize for any of you who have met me at the grocery store. I know what a disappointing experience that is. I'm just trying to buy salsa, man, and I don't I'm sorry, I can't see beyond the third row. My eyes are that bad. So I feel terrible in those situations, and Gwen, she's the life of the party. Matter of fact, we used to, when we would go, even before we were married, if we were going to go to a party, we would have to drive separately, because my worst nightmare is to have to go to a party and make small talk all night with people that I don't know. All right? It's so painful for me. Okay, so we would go to the party separately, and it was because I would say, hey, honey, you know what's going to happen? I'm going to get one good conversation, and at 9 o'clock, I am out, right? She will shut the party down. She'll be there. She'll be the last person out helping him clean up and everything. And so we figured out that, look, if I need to be alone, it doesn't mean I don't need her. And we also figured out that I am never going to be enough people for her. And coming to that mutual understanding through counseling was really important in our relationship. Then we got married, right? Oh, no, we got engaged, We got engaged. And then we got premarital counseling, okay? Pre-engagement, engagement, premarital counseling. We got premarital counseling. That was a really, really healthy, wonderful thing. And then we got married. And yesterday, we have been married now for 18 years. No. Stop. No, stop it, you guys. Oh, you're too kind. Yeah, yesterday, 18 years we've been married. And after we got married then, what we've done periodically over the years, we get what's called a tune-up, right? And what we'll do is we'll go see a counselor or go on like a marriage retreat or some kind of process there to kind of check in with each other, because it's not because there's a big problem. It's because we don't want the little problems to become big problems. So we want to go into the situation, we want to shine a light in those dark corners of our relationship and make sure there's not something really funky growing there. So we would do this over the years, and we're about due for that even right now, to go in for another kind of a tune-up. Now, I look at it like this. When we got married, it's kind of like when you bought a new house. When we got into our house here in Kansas 9 years ago, it was brand new. It was just in drywall. So we picked all the colors and everything. And one of the best things about getting a new house, I got to tell you, guys, you're going to appreciate this, right? It wasn't like they went out on a property and they planted all this grass seed. Oh, no. There's a truck that shows up with these giant rolls on the back of the truck. And they take these things and they roll out your grass onto your property. It's amazing. It's like Insta-lawn, just like when you got married. You got Insta-marriage. It's Insta-lawn. It's beautiful, and it's green, and it's lush. And I was so stoked with the whole thing. And so I'm enjoying the lawn now. Guys, let me ask you this. How long does it stay that way if you do nothing? Not too long, right? And I'm ignorant enough. I'm walking around out there just enjoying this, and I'm starting to see things pop up that doesn't look like the rest of the grass here. It doesn't, you start seeing things that grow up a little faster than the regular grass, and you're going, there's a problem. Now, if I don't do anything to maintain that lawn, does that stuff go away? It just keeps getting worse and worse. Matter of fact, if I just let it go, if I just let it ride for too long, if I don't do the basic kind of maintenance all along the way, it becomes a big deal. That lawn gets really, really unhealthy. And in order to get it back to health, it's going to take a lot of energy. It's going to take maybe a lot of money. I might need professionals to come help me with it because it's such a disaster. You realize this is still a metaphor for marriage, right? Okay. And we go into this thing. See, I would wish that I had done all the little work along the way to keep from having to do the big work later on. Now, my wife has said this. She's had friends. She's told us that we've had this process where we go in to get these, relational checkups periodically. And she said, how did you get Troy to go to counseling? Because my husband would never go to counseling with me. He thinks it's stupid, and he thinks it's going to be painful and expensive, and I don't have time, and he will never do it. Okay, so guys, I just want to talk to the men for just a second. Ladies, can you just tune out, right? Guys, what's wrong with you? This is why people don't come to me for counseling, by the way. My counseling adds up to, what's wrong with you? And stop it. I get why you don't want to go. I really do. Because the assumption is, your wife is probably pushing for it because women tend to be more relationally sensitive. When there's a problem, when there's a deficit, there's a dysfunction, usually the lady's the first one to raise the flag because they're just kind of wired to sense that a little bit quicker than us guys because we're oblivious most of the time. And then when she raises that flag, you think she's just trying to get somebody to get you into counseling to point out all your flaws. So you're going to go in there, and everything that's wrong with the marriage is my fault. Everything that's wrong is my dysfunction. You're going to walk away feeling beat up and inadequate, and you go, I'm not that bad of a guy. I don't need this. So you put up the walls. You say, no, I'm not going to do that. I totally get why you wouldn't do that. But see, just like that lawn, it may not be the way you expect it to be. My experience in going to counseling has not been like that. I never felt picked on. I expected I would be, but I didn't. It was very even-handed. It was a really good experience for us. And if you're too insecure to say counsel, how about this? Let's talk about coaching, all right? We all love baseball. You probably learned baseball when you were a kid. You had some coach who taught you the game, and he taught you how to throw, and he taught you how to field. He taught you the intricacies and the beauty of the game. And as you got older, right, maybe you started to play Little League, or you started to play in high school. You had all these other coaches and these guys who were teaching you the game. Maybe you were really good at it, and you played in college. And you still had these other coaches that were helping refine your game, these other guys who were looking at you from the outside to see that hitch in your swing that you didn't know that you had. You could look like a team like the Royals. You could argue that the Royals, some of these guys are some of the best baseball players in the world. At this point in life, they know the game pretty well. Am I right? These guys know baseball, and yet they don't just have a coach. They have coaches. They've got a pitching coach. They've got a batting coach. They have a strength and conditioning coach. They got a head coach. For crying out loud, they got a third base coach whose whole job is to tell them whether they should keep running or not. Because he sees the field, he sees where the ball is, and when you're in the heat of the run, you can't just be looking all over your shoulder. He's there to help you, give you a perspective that you can't have in the moment. And guys, baseball is a game. We're talking about the relationships in your life that will shape the quality and direction of your life and the lives of the people that you care the most about. Proverbs 12 says this, the way of a fool seems right to them, but the wise listen to advice. Some people say, well, what are my friends going to think if we go to counseling? I mean, they're going to think we're messed up. I got news for you. They already think you're messed up. Because they're messed up too. We've all got our dysfunctions. We've all got our blind spots in our relationships, but let's be honest. Let's shine a light on these things and seek help. And I'm going to overstate this, but not by a lot, okay? Are you going to care more when you're sitting across the table from a counselor? Or are you going to care more when you're sitting across the table from a lawyer? You say, Troy, do you take some kind of sick pleasure in this, going to counseling? And no, I do not like going to counseling. No, I'd rather get a root canal. I do not like this. But here's the deal. I'd rather experience the short-term discomfort and pain that comes from dealing honestly with some of these issues that crop up than the long-term pain and destruction that comes from neglect. So we need help as individuals, in our relationships, when we're single people, when we're students, when we're kids. We need that third set of eyes to look at us and see those things about us that we can't see in ourselves. Maybe in our marriage, we might need that kind of input to help us be healthy and be everything the relationship is meant to be. Maybe in our families, we need help for that family dynamic. Maybe as parents, we might need some help. A good friend of mine recently has a teenage son, and his son, like many teenagers, came across pornography and started seeking it out. And he's a kid, and he doesn't understand how toxic this is, how poisonous it is, how it's going to shape his view of relationships, how it will shape his view of women, how it's going to shape his view of sex. Absolutely poisonous stuff. And he gets discovered. His parents find out. And of course, that's embarrassing and shameful and weird, for your mom to know these things. And this kid and this dad, they're trying to figure this thing out. They kind of locked down the internet at their house, to put boundaries on that so he couldn't find this stuff. But the issue persisted. It continued to crop up. And dad's kind of at a loss, So he did one of the smartest things I've ever heard anybody do, is he sought out professional counseling that specialized in this area. So he and his son went for, I think it was 7 or 8 weeks. They went to this counselor. And this counselor was able to share with his boy in a way that his boy could receive, in a way that they could understand. Because frankly, as a dad, as parents, they didn't have the tools to healthily help their son walk on this part of his journey. We need help as individuals, man. We need help as couples. Sometimes we really need help as parents. And as long as you need help, get the right kind of help. I know it sounds obvious, but get the right kind of help. Now, talking to you today, I realize the weight of what I'm sharing with you seems to have to do with just getting professional counseling. And that's just because that's been most of my experience. But this counseling, this help, this set of third eyes looking in and giving you input onto those blind spots, onto those things that you don't see in your relationship, those deficiencies, the tools maybe that you don't have in dealing with the conflict in your lives. It doesn't have to just be professional, right? First of all, it starts with seeking God through Scripture. It starts with seeking Him through prayer, because He will guide you. It starts with seeking God in community, in godly community, people who know you, people who understand you, who know your children, who know your children's birthdays, people who are invested in your lives and can be a healthy sounding board for where you're at together. It might be your life group. It might be some friends. You might seek counsel through a pastor or some other kind of professional help. And I got to tell you, if you pull this out in your bulletin today, we've got some amazing resources available for you here at Westside. It's called How to Fight Fair. It's an insert that's in your bulletin. We've got a phenomenal counseling department. We also have some very specific lifelines that are coming up just for you in this season of our church, right? To talk about relational reconciliation, about parenting your teen, just everyday kinds of conflict. These are available to you. And it'll be a very healthy step for many of you to participate in one of those. And if you're going to be looking for help, I just want to give you a few kind of parameters as you're looking for the right kind of help. Okay, first, help with an eternal perspective. Seek out help with an eternal perspective, a Christ-centered versus a secular perspective. Now, here's what I'm not saying. I'm not saying all secular counseling, all secular help is bad. And I'm not saying all Christian help is good. But I am saying this, you need to seek out somebody who shares your fundamental values, those things that are most important to you, and who sees relationships through the same spiritual lens that you do. Another way of saying this is you need help that will connect with and challenge both of you. Both of you. Someone that both of you in the conflict can receive from, that you both trust and respect. And also someone who will hold you accountable and challenge you when you step outside of God's bounds for the best in your relationships. You need help with a humble perspective. Help with a humble perspective, a selfless versus selfish perspective, right? What's the opposite of humility? It's pride. It makes everything self-regarding. It makes everything about you and your wants and your needs. And we need to walk in this conflict with humility. It's help that tells you what you need to hear, not just what you want to hear. We all do this. It's like if you're looking for, blogs or books or, magazines, we tend to seek out the things that already agree with us, that already affirm the things that you're already thinking, right? Just kind of pound that nail in your spirit a little bit more. You really kind of got to go out of your way to look for blogs or resources, like if it's political pundits or whoever, that actually disagree with you, because we don't really want to do that. And when we seek out counsel, we tend to do the same thing. We tend to go to people who already agree with us. But I got to tell you, ladies, if you're already thinking in your heart that you want to leave your husband, you don't seek counsel from the local chapter of the man-hating group of the Traveling Pants. If you go to somebody who is a potential counselor and you share with them, you don't want somebody who's saying, "Oh yeah, I totally agree with you. I feel what you're feeling. I would feel the exact same way if I was in your shoes." You don't need to seek out counsel that is going to commiserate with you and agree with you. You need counsel that is going to want to see both sides of the conflict. Philippians 2 says this, "Do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit, but rather in humility, Value others above yourselves, not looking to your own interests, but each of you to the interests of the others. In your relationships with one another, have the same mindset as Christ Jesus. Wouldn't it be nice if you could just get a pill? You know, have a pill for that. You want to lose weight? I got a pill. You know, you got relational conflict. Here you go. Here's a prescription. The thing is, that happens. Some people get a pill. And I'm not saying that there isn't a time when we get pharmaceutical help, to actually get medical help, okay? For instance, every day of my life, I take a fistful of allergy medication because I'm pretty much allergic to Kansas. Every beautiful thing you see out there makes my head want to explode, okay? That's why I look like this. I'm actually 27 years old. You know, and it's not a deficiency in my character because I need help with my allergies, you know? I didn't do anything wrong. I have friends that they need medication emotionally. I have friends that if they need certain kinds of medication because chemically their bodies tend towards depression. I have another friend back in California. When he gets off of medication, he becomes erratic and his relationships become unstable. There is such a thing as good chemical help for you in your relationships. But there's also such a thing as problematic chemical help. A friend of mine this last week just told me this story, and I didn't know this about him. A couple of years ago, it surfaced in his family that he had some pretty serious anger issues. He would go to work really hard, long hours, and he was giving his best at work, and he would come home, and his family would get the worst of him. And there was already a lot of issues. There were some problems in that relationship, and this anger thing only exacerbated all of it. So he goes to a doctor, and the doctor says, oh yeah, I can give you a pill for that. And he gives him this prescription. What happened is fundamentally it was a chemical Band-Aid. It made him numb, so he didn't feel the conflict that was already going on around him. And for 2 years this went on. And his relationship continued to spiral downward, and it got worse, and the dysfunction got worse, but he couldn't feel it until it was too late. And his wife is gone. We need help that will bring us a healing perspective. A help that won't mask the issue, that won't sweep it under the carpet, will help that will honestly, vulnerably help us deal with the roots of the conflict. A uniting versus a dividing perspective. Jesus always leads us to reconciliation. Fundamentally, the gospel is always about healing that which is broken. See, we need help that will advocate for the relationship before the individual, not instead of the individual, but before the individual. See, because some counselors, their solution is you just need to remove all the negativity from your life. You need to remove all the negative people, all the naysayers in your life, right? Because the problem isn't in you, and the problem isn't in the dysfunction of the way you guys communicate. The problem is you're just with the wrong person. But what if that person is your parent? What if that person is your spouse? What if that person is your child? We need to seek out counsel that will see these relationships as redeemable and not disposable. And absolutely, there are cases where there is extreme physical and emotional abuse, and that the best thing you can do is to be physically separated from this person. But it's not because we're disposing of this human being. It's not because we're giving up on a relationship. We're separating because there is hope for that relationship. And for us to stay in proximity with that person is only going to perpetuate the abuse. It's only going to perpetuate this dysfunction. We're only going to continue to spiral downward. So in hope for that relationship and in love for that person, we need to step away for a season to seek out healing and reconciliation and to get help. Paul says this in Philippians 2, therefore, if you have any encouragement from being united with Christ, if any comfort from his love, if any common sharing in the Spirit, if any tenderness and compassion, then make my joy complete by being like-minded, having the same love, being one in spirit and of one mind. You will have conflict. Someone is going to poke at that sensitive, squishy spot in your spirit. And the emotion is going to rise up in you, and your vision is going to narrow. And you're going to need someone who is not emotionally involved, who can see from the outside, who can be a coach, who can be a counselor, who can be a help. You will need help. But man, I got to tell you this, as long as you're getting help, go to the source and foundation of all lasting help. Psalm 121 says this, I lift up my eyes to the mountains. Where does my help come from? My help comes from the Lord, the maker of heaven and earth. If you're looking for counseling, go to the wonderful counselor, the Prince of Peace. He's given the gift of Scripture to us. He's given the gift of prayer that we can come together in prayer and to seek Him. He's given us the Holy Spirit who lives and indwells every believer, who can guide us and confront us and remind us of all those things that we've learned that Jesus has taught us. The source of our help is Christ. We go back to our passage in the book of Acts. And we got Paul and Barnabas and their contingent. They go to Jerusalem and they get together with these guys and they seek God and they pray and they discuss. And in verse 28 it says this, they seem good to the Holy Spirit and to us not to burden you with anything beyond the following requirements. They travailed before God, and the Spirit of God, through the discussion and through the process, guided them to a decision that impacts you and I today. If you're going to get help, get the best help. Get the help from the one who knows you best and loves you the most. The one who is full of grace and truth. The one whose goal was to do a work to reconcile us to God when we were in conflict with God, when sin separated us from our Creator. Jesus came to reconcile and to heal the conflict of that broken relationship. We're going to be celebrating communion. And during the next song, the elements are going to get passed out. And I want you to take them, and I want you to hold on to those elements as we sing together. But have this in your heart as we worship, that Jesus never wrote you off. Jesus didn't dismiss you. Jesus never gave up on you and I. And while we were yet sinners, Christ died for us. And when our relationship with God was broken, when we were in complete conflict with God, Jesus did that work of reconciliation and healing we can never do for ourselves. Let's worship together.